Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Tyree Small, and I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is sports. So we're going to be talking about, who's the best, who's the real GOAT, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, all that good stuff. Now, I'm just playing. We're not going to be talking about that exactly. What I want to do is open up a frequent topic around sports, which is whether college athletes should be compensated for playing sports or not. Now, this is a very complicated subject. For many, this is a closed and shut case, while others have certain skepticisms. What I want to do is open up a well thought out discourse on the matter so people could have a better understanding of how this would essentially work. So I want to first start off by saying I believe all college athletes should be paid because of how stressful it is to try to balance schoolwork and playing an intense sport at the same time. But the reality is only certain athletes in certain sports programs should be paid because of how much their respective sports bring in. Another reason certain athletes should be paid is because of how much it annually costs to support an athlete's body and mind. And lastly, the reason athletes should be paid is because that's just the nature of the business and competition, and it's going to happen anyway. So let's just dive into it, shall we? Okay, the first thing I want to touch on is the NCAA and its revenue. So, for those who've been living under a rock, this may come as a surprise to you, but the NCAA is a billion-dollar organization. Different televised events such as March Madness and Pac-12 playoffs football help universities generate millions of dollars from sponsors and ticket sales to help fund the many bills and incentives that come with campus life. But even outside of just football and basketball, there are many other sports that help contribute to this as well, such as volleyball, baseball, swimming, track, and a plethora of other sports. Now, although all these sports can play their own specific role in bringing big business for schools, their specific contributions can vary vastly. A 2017 article displayed the revenue of how much money an average D1 school brings in from athletics. The school who brought in the most money was the University of Texas, which brought in $182 million. Of that money alone, men's football and basketball contributed to over 80% of it, which makes me formulate the question, should it only be specific sports programs that should be compensated? Now, I've heard many arguments against this from people saying certain things like, why is it fair that only certain athletes should be paid? Well, guess what? It's not supposed to be fair. It's a business. There's no such thing as fair in business. And that's exactly what the NCAA is. It's a business. And many people also try to make the argument that the reason for the success of these tournaments is because of the marketing and the commercial ads of the NCAA. I will argue with those people is that they're very wrong and they're living in the dinosaur age of basketball marketing. There are many YouTube videos of young high school and middle school basketball players that explode when they hit millions of watches before those guys even step into college. Nowadays, these guys are walking in with huge amounts of stock and cachet before they even walk into college. If you don't believe me, you can look at videos of guys like Zion Williamson, who has videos of him in middle school dunking from the free throw line, or guys like LaMelo Ball, who once scored 94 points in a high school basketball game, breaking the record for the most points scored ever in a high school basketball game. Speaking on those guys brings me to another point as to why athletes like basketball players and football players should be paid for their sport. The cost of the conditioning for these sports is much higher than any of the other D1 sports. These days, so many factors lead to being a great athlete in these sports, from dieting to being able to afford the strength training to even the support system of the shoes. If you look at basketball in its earliest years of development, you will see guys playing the Chuck Taylor shoes, which carry no ankle support at all, or cushion support from when you come down from the air. Even in football, at the start, those guys weren't even wearing shoulder pads and were just crashed into each other full speed ahead. Sports like these have gotten so competitive over evolutions of kids training and watching the sport to where soon, if you haven't poured tons of money in your training and conditioning from a kid from like 8 years old, it's highly unlikely you would even stand a chance to making it into college ball. So heroic stories like LeBron James making it into the NBA without no father or growing up in a terrible condition, those will soon be gone. So if that happens to be the case for kids, it's even heightened for college guys who do not have the funds to properly condition themselves outside of just what their program offers. Imagine those guys having to go up against guys like Zion Williamson for basketball or Joe Burrow for football. guys who's been getting enormous amounts of sponsorships from an early age and has had thousands of dollars poured into their training. They would not stand a chance against those guys and seem malnourished. So, in my opinion, giving those guys a piece of already a $1 billion pie would just help the league be more competitive. So, the last point I want to make on why I think it would be better off if for the NCAA to just play football players and basketball players is simply because colleges are just going to do it anyway to make their teams better. So for those who are not aware of this, but for years, there's been an ongoing scandal in college basketball where college teams are basically bribing specific high school prospects to come join their team so that they can have the competition advantage over other teams. One instance of this was in 2018 when it was leaked that Arizona covertly offered former college star DeAndre Ayton $100,000 to come play for their team instead of other respective teams. Now, was Arizona the only team doing this? Absolutely not. But they were the ones who were caught red-handed from secret video footage of the FBI. Other notable teams who have been investigated and accused of this were Duke, Texas, Kansas, Clemson, Wichita State, and many more. Now, mind you, these are big teams, so that leads me to believe that if it's known that high prestige teams like these are secretly paying off big high time high school prospects, then everyone must be doing it. Personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you're not aware of this, a lot of these guys do not come from great backgrounds. A lot of these guys come from impoverished areas or areas where it's a lot of crime and not a lot of economic opportunity. So that money could go a long way, especially if their sports careers do not pan out, which is very likely since it's only 1% of college athletes actually make it to the league and only 3% stay in the league longer than 3 years. So, in conclusion, in my honest opinion, if you just can't simply agree on whether athletes deserve to be paid or not, you can at least agree on, at most, they should be allowed to make money off their own image and likeness. The NCAA at the end of the day is just a business. It's not a plantation. These guys and girls are not their property. Does it really hurt the NCAA if a person does a commercial or gets a sponsor from the local barbershop or car wash? Or if a guy or girl decides to make money by signing a couple of shirts or hosting a little camp for the youth? While the NCAA has been stubborn for a while, they have recently been opening to the idea of it. In 2019, the California government signed a Fair Play to Play Act, which allowed for players to make money off their likeness. This will go effect in 2023. My speculation on why the NCAA has more of an open heart to this is that they've seen the traction of high school prospects deciding to not go to college and instead playing in Europe. A big name guy who's an example of this is RJ Hampton, who decided to skip college and go to New Zealand. Or a guy like Jalen Green, who got a $1 million internship from the NBA to travel and play for their G League. The tides are changing, and the NCAA is starting to realize the name doesn't hold as much weight as it did in the past years. Who knows what's going to happen? We'll just have to see in the upcoming years. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a really good day.